Hi everyone, Aiden here at the etrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Curt A16 fifth wheel hitch with the S20 slider base. This is going to be a great option if you need to haul your fifth wheel, but you maybe have a truck bed that's shorter than 8 feet. Not necessarily recommended for anything shorter than 6 feet, but if you're in that in-between range or you're noticing clearance issues between your fifth wheel and the cab of your truck, a slider is a great option because it can give us 12 additional inches of clearance away from making some sharp turns. Let's check it out. So right away I want to talk about operating the slider. This is going to be a more manual system, so you'll have to pull this lever from the outside of the truck bed whenever we need that turning clearance. To unlock the lever, there is a pin and clip in there just holding it in place, which is pretty hard to get out because of this welded plate. So I found it's actually better to go to the other side and just push out. It launches pretty aggressively, but it does work fairly well. At this point, whenever that lever is opened, we would get out or get back into the truck, drive forward, and this will lock into the extended position, 12 inches back, giving us that additional turning clearance that we might need for our truck and our fifth wheel. Getting it back into position is the same process by just pulling that handle and then getting back in the truck, and it can return to that normal state, and you can put your pin and clip back in. And before we get too far, I do want to say that the whole system here has a gross trailer weight rating of 16,000 pounds. That's how much weight it can pull, with a vertical load limit of 4,000 pounds. Now I will note that the S20 slider here is actually rated at 20,000 pounds for gross trailer weight rating. So with that being said, if you decide to upgrade to a more heavy duty head or just go with a different kit like the A20 kit, then you can get a little bit more out of this. And they also make an S25 slider with an A25 head that can get you even more weight capacity if you need it. Just make sure you're watching out for your truck and going by the lowest rated component and making sure your truck can handle all that weight too. Now for the fifth wheel itself, it's going to be operating on a dual jaw system, which you can see right in the middle here. Those jaws will overlap with each other and give us 360 degrees of contact all around our kingpin. If you look over to the side, those jaws can be controlled with the handle. Pull this pin and clip out, very similar to the one we saw before, but a lot easier to remove, and it can be swapped out for a padlock. Then pull the handle out and back to open those spring-loaded jaws, and then we can back up to our trailer. I've got a dummy kingpin right now that can be guided in and back into place until it snaps back around. The handle will pop back into place, and then we can pin it back up or take our padlock and lock it back up. And then when your fifth wheel is hooked up, you're obviously not going to have much room inside the bed. So operating that pin and clip and the handle from outside the truck bed is still very easy to do. The spring-loaded jaws kind of shot that out pretty aggressively, but when it's hooked up to your full trailer, it won't do that. You can just, at this point, drive away from your trailer. And with the built-in indicator on the back of the fifth wheel head, that's another way to confirm that we're positively coupled, with the green color combination matching up with that sticker saying we're good to go on our towing mode, and yellow being the ready to couple position. So as I open up those jaws, you'll see it briefly switch to partially red, letting us know it's not fully coupled. And fully open here, it'll be ready to accept our kingpin so we can back up to our trailer at that point. And the nice thing about this being on the back of the fifth wheel is that you can see it from the cab of your truck. Now, one thing you've probably noticed around the video so far is how much movement the fifth wheel head has, both side to side and front to back. Now that's built with the built-in torsion system. And I'll actually unpin the head here so we can get a better look at that with the clip at the front, as well as the large pin through the center that holds the head in place to the body. As I lift it up, we can see that we've got two very large rubber isolators at the front and back, as well as underneath right here on the two sides. Now that's going to do a number of things. It allows for some movement in the fifth wheel head, which as we're hooking up, makes it a lot easier because we don't have to be perfectly aligned with our kingpin. This can kind of flex and move around to meet it as we're hooking up. But then also, it's going to reduce the noise as we're going down the road and act as a shock absorption system. So It makes the whole ride quality a lot smoother. You can hear there's not a lot of banging and metal on metal contact there, so it does a great job at keeping things nice and quiet. On the side of the fifth wheel here, you're going to notice 3 different holes for height adjustment. So we've got a range of anywhere from 21.5 inches from the truck bed to the top of the fifth wheel hitch, anywhere down to 17.5 inches. Those 3 points of adjustment are each 2 inches apart for 4 total inches of travel up and down, so you should be able to find a good height to match your truck and trailer combination. Now the whole assembly here is going to be a steel construction with a carbide powder coat finish. That's going to help it resist rust and corrosion over time all throughout the entire thing. One thing to note with that is that any sort of coating, it is susceptible to scratching, and if that does scratch, that's where you have to worry about rust and corrosion. Now the area on the whole assembly that I'd worry about the most is the top of the fifth wheel here. That's where we've got metal on metal contact with our kingpin, or our pin box rather, and the head of the fifth wheel. Luckily, it does come included with a lube plate here that can act as a barrier between those 2 pieces of metal, with our kingpin sitting in the middle into those jaws, reducing our metal on metal contact and protecting that coating for a long period of time. Other maintenance that we can do to keep everything operating smoothly and like new: on the jaws, there's 2 Zerk fittings where we can apply grease, keeping those operating smoothly. And down on the slide bars, this part does have a coating on it, but I would recommend adding grease as well to keep those running smoothly and keeping them from binding. If you do apply grease here, I would be mindful of it being so exposed to the elements. If it collects dirt and debris, consider wiping it down and reapplying new grease so that things don't get caught up in the rollers and the track. Now, as far as the installation goes, it's pretty easy to just drop it in place and pin it in. It uses your industry standard rail system, and if you need that for your truck and don't have it already, you can check out our website to find the right kit for you. But once you have it, it's just a drop-in installation. So let's walk through that process with you now. Before you drop the slider base in, your kit does come with these rubber isolators. That's going to help reduce metal on metal contact and reduce noise. We're just going to drop those in place right now on our ISR rails. And with these, we've got the 2 holes on the side and the slotted hole in the middle. That's where we're going to line all 4 of those up with, and then we can drop it in place. One thing to note is that you will need an extra set of hands because it is quite heavy, especially on the side with the slider, but it comes ready to drop in right out of the box and with plenty of convenient hand holds. So we'll just drop that in. With the base in place, we can get our pins and our clips, slide those through the tabs in all 4 corners, and then attach our fifth wheel. Installing the fifth wheel out of the box, it's going to come assembled with the body and the head unit. Just take that center pin out and separate the 2 halves to make the installation process a bit easier. Now, one thing I will say is you want to have your hardware ready. With this head, you're going to get a bolt and a lock nut that will pass through the inner holes and secure with that nut on the inside. Getting this installed, it might be a little easier to have a second set of hands, but if you can grab it by the center and get one of your bolts started just to help hold it in place on either end, that would be ideal. And then we can get the nuts installed later after repeating this on both sides. Now at this point, you want to take your wrench and socket and actually start to tighten these down in all 4 corners, and then we can torque it to the specifications found in our instructions. For the torque wrench, it's pretty easy to rent these out or borrow them, but if you want to get your own, you can find those here at eTrailer. Just make sure to find the proper torque spec in your instructions and repeat that for the other 3 bolts. With everything torqued down, we can take the head unit and drop it down into place, securing it with the large pin going in through the back of the whole assembly, and securing out front with our smaller pin and retaining clip. Now, as far as this kit goes, I think it's going to be a really solid option. Personally, I like the Curt kit a little bit better than the B&W kit, just for their handle design to control the slider. If you're going to be looking at a more manual slider option, I want it to be easier to use, and the fact that you can pull that handle towards you to get that slider to disengage and be ready to slide back, rather than pulling it front to back like the B&W design uses, I think will serve a lot of people much better and just be easier to use. Everything aside from that operates quite smoothly, and with this whole kit, you do have a little bit of headroom. With the S20 slider base being able to handle 20,000 pounds, down the road if we decide to maybe upgrade trucks or upgrade trailers and we need more weight capacity, we can just swap out the A16 head for maybe an A20 head. So there's room to grow there within the whole system. But that'll do it for our look at the Curt A16 fifth wheel hitch with our S20 slider base. Thanks for watching.